America. Welcome to the Ben McCoy Show, documenting the decline of Western civilization one podcast at a time. Glad to have you on board. It's been a little while, but we are back and better than ever. Got a lot to talk about. Today is Sunday, August 7th, and the Senate has just passed the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which is kind of a it's what Biden's Build Back Better bill sort of evolved into in the Senate. It's not as egregious as that bill. I mean, that bill is just flat scary. But this one is it's a Democrat bill through and through, and you can tell because there's plenty of taxes, plenty of spending, and no solution really to any problems, which is kind of the hallmarks of anything the Democrats come up with. And unfortunately, a lot of Republican bills are the same way. But I think history shows the Democrat bills are a lot worse on the American taxpayer. And this is certainly no exception. Usually you can tell exactly what a bill is going to do by its title. Just, go ahead and assume that the opposite of what it's called is what it's going to do. This is called the Inflation Reduction Act. So there's going to be no inflation reduction happening whatsoever. And the nonprofit, nonpartisan Tax Foundation did an analysis, which they are wont to do, and found that is exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be no inflation reduction. In fact, over the next 10 years, it looks like inflation will actually increase. Not by much, they're saying, but, who needs more inflation in the position we're in right now? Spending's definitely going to increase. Taxes are going to increase. But the big kicker that they found is a net loss of 30,000 jobs as a result of this bill. This is it's kind of a 10-year bill, the way it's laid out, where all of its different programs and spending and all this stuff kind of takes place over the next 10 years. And over that course of time, our economy is going to shed 30,000 jobs, and workers are going to be looking at smaller after-tax paychecks as a result. Pulling up the Tax Foundation's website right now, taxfoundation.org/inflation-reduction-act, if you want to go check that out. It's called Details and Analysis of the Senate Inflation Reduction Act Tax Provisions. I'm just going to read a little bit of this to you. Last week's Democrat-sponsored Inflation Reduction Act, IRA for short, successor to the House-passed Build Back Better Act of late 2021, has been touted by President Biden to, among other things, help reduce the country's crippling inflation. Using the Tax Foundation's general equilibrium model, we estimate that the Inflation Reduction Act would reduce long-run economic output by about 0.1% and eliminate about 30,000 full-time equivalent jobs in the United States. It would also reduce average after-tax incomes for taxpayers across every income quintile over the long run. Did you get that? You're going to lose your job, and those lucky enough to hold on to their jobs are going to look at smaller paychecks just as a result of this Inflation Reduction Act. Let's see, and that's every income quintile, the people who make very little to the people who make a whole lot. Everybody in between, the entire middle class. I mean, one of the hallmarks of Democrat legislative action is to tax the middle class. They love taking it out on the middle class, and then at campaign time, they go out and campaign for the middle class. But while they're in Congress, they love to stick it to the middle class because that's where all the money's at. Let's face it. I mean, they love to talk about the millionaires and the billionaires and all, but that's not where the money is. There's not enough millionaires and billionaires out there. That's not where the money is in this country. That's not where the financial windfall is that keeps our country going. It's the middle class, because that's where everybody is. That's where the most concentration of the population is within the middle class. Those are the people that do all the living, working, and dying in this country and paying taxes. And that's where the money's at. And the Democrats know that. But they can't go out there and campaign on, hey, we're going to stick it to the middle class. Because those are the people they're asking to vote for them. So they're going to go out there and talk about how we're going to stick it to the millionaires and billionaires. And usually they help take care of the millionaires and billionaires, which the Republicans do as well. I mean, let's face it, that's where the big campaign money comes from for these people. So yeah, they tend to cozy up to Wall Street and investment houses and the banks and all this kind of stuff. And it's usually the middle class that gets stuck holding the bag every single time. And this bill's no exception. Back to the article. By reducing long-run economic growth, this bill may actually worsen inflation by constraining the productive capacity of the economy. Our analysis contains estimates of the budgetary, economic, and distributional impacts of the Inflation Reduction Act as specified in bill text provided on July 27. Using the general equilibrium model, we estimate that the tax provisions, IRS enforcement, and drug pricing provisions in the bill would increase federal revenues by about $656 billion over the budget window, before accounting for $352 billion in expanded tax credits for individuals and businesses, resulting in a net revenue increase of about $304 billion from 2022 to 2031. Now, if all that went over your head, first of all, I encourage you to go pull up the article and read it for yourself, because you can kind of study it a little deeper and look at the numbers. I know it's hard listening to a bunch of numbers being shouted over a podcast, but what this is saying is that there's going to be a lot more taxes, a lot more spending, and people are going to have smaller paychecks. Basically, we're looking at spending increases of about $400 billion, and let's see, $700 billion in new taxes. Which is, I mean, how's that going to work to reduce inflation? Anyway, but the big finding, I mean, more spending, more taxes. I mean, we're kind of used to that by now, but the big finding is this 30,000 jobs. It might not sound like a lot, but that's 30,000 jobs, man. That is a lot. I mean, people that are working today that won't be working tomorrow as a result of this. Now, I want to make a couple of points here. One, this was a party line vote in the Senate, 50-50. The illustrious Vice President Kamala Harris cast the deciding vote in favor of the Democrats, 51-50, as the president of the Senate. And this bill would not have passed had it not been for Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. Now, conservatives and Republicans love to lionize Senator Manchin. He has been he's been a wrench in the gears of a lot of different Democrat plans, especially having to do with going after the fossil fuel industry. Being a senator from West Virginia, he tends to do a pretty good job of taking care of the mining industry, the coal and the fossil fuel industry. So, he's kind of been a wrench in the works on a lot of those fronts. But, a lot of people have said, why didn't he just switch sides and become a Republican? Well, here's why. He's not a Republican. This guy's a Democrat. We need to remember that and be careful in the way that we look at Senator Manchin, because when push comes to shove, hey, he's like everybody else in there. Give me what I want and you got my vote. And that's what happened. He got some of his goodies in this thing and cast his vote along party lines with the Democrats. And so the Republicans were defeated on this 51-50. I mean, man, talk about a polarizing issue. We just, everything. It's elections have consequences, like Barack Obama said. And boy, are they going to find that out come November. Because I'm telling you, it is going to be a bloodbath at the election. And that is, metaphorically speaking, Democrats are going to they're going to get it handed to them. They've done nothing but make a complete mess out of everything they've touched. It's just been a disaster. And Biden, I mean, the worst numbers in American history for a president. It's unbelievable. We're looking at 72% right now of Americans believe that we are headed in the wrong direction in this country. I mean, you don't ever hear of numbers like this. Wrong direction. And who's at the helm? Biden and the Democrats. So there you go. November is going to be interesting. Let's see. This bill raises taxes on families during a recession. Now, just because Joe Biden, suddenly redefined what a recession is, doesn't mean we're not in a recession. A recession is it's not something that's nebulous. It's an actual economic definition. Two consecutive quarters of negative growth, I believe, is the actual definition of a recession. And we have crossed that threshold. We are in a recession, whether they want to admit it or not. And to pass a bill like this, that just more taxes, more spending during a recession and during this crippling inflation, is just the worst idea I've ever heard of. But, that's what the Democrats are all about, bad ideas. So anyway, I put out a tweet on this thing and linked to this article. So go to Twitter and check me out at Ben McCoy Show to get the link to this and some other stuff. And please follow and all that stuff on Twitter. I'd love to see you there. Let's see, what else on this thing? The major tax revision. It kind of goes through all of the different tax areas. And I mean, they're squeezing a nickel out of everybody they can. Individual income taxes to corporate and international taxes. Here's another thing in this bill that's going to be crippling to our economy. It imposes a 15% minimum tax on corporate book income for corporations with profits over $1 billion, effective for tax years beginning after December 31st of this year. So this is going to be your mid/large to large corporations. Because let's see, profits. Pretty large corporations over $1 billion. These corporations, what the left has never understood. They think that they can just, levy taxes on everybody that they don't like, these large corporations, and it's going to have a net positive effect for what they want because they're going to get more money, and it's going to punish the corporations, and it never, ever, ever works that way. These corporations that they hate so much don't just exist out there in space for themselves as money-making machines, and that's how the left characterizes corporations all the time. And yet look around you wherever you are right now, your pen in your hand, your, water bottle. These are all $1 billion plus corporations that exist to make these products and employ American workers. I mean, these things don't exist. Your computer, everything around you, the chair you're sitting in, the food you eat, the car you drive, everything around you and in your life that you depend on was made by a corporation that employs American workers and international workers as well, and generates a lot of revenue, and that's why they exist, to generate a profit for their shareholders, and also to produce, to be competitive in the market and produce goods and products that consumers want and keep them in business by continuing to support. And so more corporations and more revenue for corporations is a good thing. That means that their products are working. People want them. I mean, there's nothing better than a consumer-driven economy because we are the final arbiters of who survives in the economic dog-eat-dog world and who doesn't, based on if the product is something we like, we want, we need, we depend on, then we'll support it. We'll buy it. If not, we'll look the other way, go to something else, and that company will go away. And either they'll retool and come back to the market with something better, or they'll just, dissolve. And that is where all the power is. It's in your hands and my hands, whether we're just, hourly wage workers out there in the world in the lower middle class. We still hold all the cards because we decide in a free market system who lives and who dies economically in the market. And so these great, big, rich, billionaire corporations that the left hates so much, I mean, that's the lifeblood of our economy. Well, small business is the lifeblood of our economy. I mean, there's more small business out there than anything else. But companies, corporations, big or small, that's the lifeblood of our economy. And we decide who succeeds and who fails based on their goods brought to market. And supply and demand and all that stuff that you already know about because you're smart enough to listen to this show. You're smart enough to know about basic economics. So, to go after these corporations with these insanely heavy tax burdens, the corporations aren't sweating it. They hate that they have to raise prices on their consumers, and they, have to take some actions here and there that, they would not have taken otherwise, but they're going to get around it. They're going to absorb it. It's going to be an easy sidestep for them. They simply need to raise the prices on their goods that go to market, that we purchase, that we depend on, meaning more money comes out of our paycheck to buy these things we're used to paying X for, and now we're paying X plus whatever, all because the left decided, hey, these evil corporations need to be paying their fair share, so we're going to tax them more. And so they levy a heavy tax on them, and they say, all right, that's fine. Our bottom line still needs to be this. And so in order to keep it this, we need to raise the prices on our products by whatever. And consumers will pay more, meaning less money in our pockets. And the Democrats get their way because they've put their heavy taxes on these corporations. And see, Donald Trump understood that principle. More than anybody else in our history in government, as far as I'm concerned, because he came from that world. He was the guy getting the heavy taxes and then having to take action like raising prices and things to offset that. And he understood exactly what makes corporations tick, what makes these companies, what they want, what they need in order to be more profitable, employ more people, putting more Americans back to work, giving them bigger paychecks. He knew what all of that required. And he put policies in place that made that happen. And that's why he repatriated more dollars from overseas back into America than any other president in our history, brought more companies back to America, punished companies that said, like when Ford was saying, well, we want this plant in Mexico, and because whatever, we got cheap labor and everything. He said, that's fine. Every Ford that you export back into America is going to get a 30% tax or something on it. And they couldn't, they're like, what? So, it was just simple economics because he came from that world, and he made it work where these companies, it was in their best interest to come back to America and employ American workers and, write bigger paychecks, and everybody was happy, economically speaking. So, the left doesn't get that. They think they can just punish. It's a zero-sum game to them. Just punish the big corporations, and they get more money. The left, for their spending, their ridiculous spending bills, and their green energy, and their this and that. And these evil corporations are punished and go run off with their tail between their legs. And that's not what happens. What happens is you and I hold the bag. We have to spend more of our hard-earned money for products and goods and services. Because the left has raised taxes on corporations, and that has been passed down to us. That's how it works. It has always worked that way, and it always will work that way. So that's another big impact that's in this thing, is the heavy, heavy, heavy taxes on these evil corporations that profit over $1 billion. These corporations that you and I depend on for everything in our lives, pretty much. And we're going to pay more for it. And that's just, that's basic leftist policy right there. That's been going on forever. That's Keynesian economics is what that is. Let's see what else is in this thing. I think we've covered, there's a lot. And I encourage you to go check it out. Go look at my tweet to get the link to this thing, at Ben McCoy Show on Twitter, and read through it, because you really need to read this analysis of what we're looking at here. The Tax Foundation is a great group. They're nonprofit, nonpartisan, 501c3 organization, and they do an honest analysis on tax policy. And they're usually spot on. Everything they say is pretty much what ends up happening. They are a lot more accurate than the Congressional Budget Office, who has a terrible track record. I hate when you watch the media and the CBO scored it to be this and that. The CBO, you and I could get together and come up with a better analysis of what these things are going to end up doing than the CBO. The CBO is a joke. So, yeah, I just don't trust the Congressional Budget Office, anything they say, for better or worse, really. Because they're always wrong. Anyway, Tax Foundation's a good outfit, and they'll tell you this. They'll give you the skinny on what's going on. One of these little charts they have in here shows, and this is just tricky politics right here. how they can say that the result of their bill is going to, you'll probably hear some Democrat lawmakers out there talking about how Americans are going to see bigger paychecks. What ends up happening? This is I'm still trying to figure this chart out myself. But it's got the different income groups, those making 0% to 20%, 20 to 40, 40 to 60 of the income in this nation, and it go 90, 95, 95, from the very poor to the very rich. And the chart is called Distributional Effects of the Inflation Reduction Act, percent change in after-tax income. Now, what the chart is showing is a bump in after-tax income in 2023 for every income bracket. A little bit of an increase. The 0 to 20%, the poorest in our nation, 2.1% increase. And most of it hovers around a 0.1% increase for everybody else. There's the 40 to 60s, a 0.5%, the 20 to 40%, 0.8% increase. And then it goes to conventional, the 2032, 10 years later, in 2032, and everybody's at about a 0.2% of an increase. However, the dynamic long-run effect, the last column shows the dynamic long-run effect of everybody's after-tax income as a result of the entire outlays of the entire bill, everything, the spending, everything, the taxing, all of it put together. The cumulative effect in a 10-year span from this moment forward, 10 years from now, it's going to be a loss of 0.2% of income, after-tax income, for everybody. The only exception being the 99 to 100% bracket is going to be a 0.3% loss. So everybody else, 0.2, the richest, 0.3. That's the cumulative effect. So in the short run, they're going to point to, look, there's a bump in everybody's paycheck, a little bit of a tiny little, speck of a bump in everybody's paycheck. However, the cumulative effect over a 10-year span, which is where that's what matters. You don't care if you get a little bit of a paycheck bonus. Of course it helps tomorrow, but you care what your yearly salary. Look at it this way. Let's say you're making $60,000 a year. And, I'm walking into a math problem here. I haven't even worked out in my head ahead of time. So I don't know. What do you make a week? Whatever it is, you're used to X a week, and your annual salary is $60,000. Well, next week you make X times, whatever. You're making more on that week than you have been making every other week before that. But your annual salary just went down to $55,000. You see what I'm saying? You got that little weekly bump, which, that's nice, but wait a minute, my annual salary went down overall. That's not good. That's what we're talking about here. There's a little short-term spike here and there for everybody, but over the long term, the annual salary in the metaphor is a drop in after-tax income. That's not what we want. And that's what we need to be aware of when they go out there talking about, we are putting more money in Americans' pockets, because you're going to hear all that stuff, how people are going to have bigger paychecks as a result of this. And that's actually true in a sense, in a short-term sense, but that's not the whole story, because the 10-year cumulative effect is a smaller paycheck for everybody. There's not one exception. From people making nothing to people making everything, it's going to be a smaller paycheck in the long run over a 10-year period. So that includes you, me, and everybody else. So keep that in mind, and don't let them lie to you. So what else? Let's see. Yeah, check that out. You really need to check that out and read this. It's a great analysis on the taxfoundation.org. What else do we got? The Google lawsuit. Nobody's talking about this that I could find. Maybe they will in the next couple of days. It's kind of fresh news I just happened to stumble on. This is Diaz et al. Versus Google. And what this has to do with, I don't know if you participated in this or you remember this, but the COVID-19 contact tracing app that Google put together during the height of the pandemic. This was an app. I didn't want anything to do with this app. We stayed as far from it as we could because I could kind of see the writing on the wall. I can't imagine why anybody would want to download this thing on their phone because of what, the privacy concerns. And that's what ended up happening. That's what the lawsuit's about, is a contact tracing app that you download on your phone. Google actually partnered with Apple on this thing. I mean, the two diametrically opposed competitors got together on this thing and made this contact tracing app framework for health officials to use and monitor contact tracing in their communities. Now, that should scare you right there. I mean, why is big tech teaming up with health officials and government to monitor what everybody's doing in their private lives with their phones and their, with an app like that? Now, it was an opt-in type of thing, and apparently millions of people did it. You download this app, and it's for the very paranoid in our society to find out have I been in contact around anybody that might have been exposed to COVID? Oh my God, let me get the app and find out. So you download the app, you put in all your information, and you go about your daily life, and you count on the fact that all the people around you have maybe downloaded this app as well, and they went to the doctor, and this guy found out he's COVID positive, and so he goes to his app and he punches in, "I'm COVID positive." And so the apps speak to each other through Bluetooth as everybody carries on about their life and their community on Main Street, and one app talks to another app, "COVID positive over here." Well, all this is supposed to be done with privacy concerns kept in mind, where everything's encrypted and it's all based on geolocation and this and that, but you don't know who the specific people are. This encrypted code is COVID positive, but you don't know who that encrypted code belongs to. I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but the idea behind it was everybody downloads the app, and the people who are COVID positive enter that information into the app. All their medical information and personally identifying information is kept private. And the apps just sort of speak to each other and create a map and whatever. And you don't know nobody knows who the people are. It's just kind of tells you if you've been in contact with anybody that might be COVID positive. That's the basic idea. There's probably a much better way to explain that, but that's what I got for right now. Anyway, guess what? Well, the privacy concerns didn't exactly turn out that way. Somebody left the back door open. Google, who developed the Android platform, as you all know, the Android platform, every Android phone, be it Samsung, Motorola, whatever, every carrier, T-Mobile, Verizon, everybody, the Android platform has a system log file. Now, everything that happens to that phone goes into the system log file. I don't want to get too technical with it. I don't even understand it all, but every app that's downloaded, everything that happens, everywhere you go, the geolocation tracing, all that stuff, the log file, system log file, everything's compiled in the log file on your Android phone. Now, the problem is that Google trusts third party. Let me back up. There are certain providers who have automatic access to that log file, like the cell phone providers, Verizon, T-Mobile, all those people. They get automatic access to the log file because I guess they have to have it in order to service the phones. So that's understandable. And there are also big app developers that get access. Anyway, third-party app developers can also apply for access to the log file in creating all the different apps you see on the Play Store if you're an Android user. Anyway, the log file is wide open, basically. Anybody can get to the log file. Well, this whole contact tracing, this COVID-19 contact tracing app wrote everything to the log file. That wasn't necessary. They didn't have to design it that way, but they did. And you start to get an idea, is this just kind of a dry run for something? I mean, think about it. If people's fear of something like a pandemic can be harnessed and weaponized in such a way that people willingly give up their privacy and their personal information for this, sense of security, not even real security, just for the sense of security. Have I been in contact with anybody that might have COVID? Oh my God. Just for that sense that my app tells me I'm safe, just for that sense of security. And people are willingly able to, willingly participating in this. What can that be used for? What possible ends and motives could that be used for that, there's evil intentions? I mean, this is already involving health officials, Fauci and all his minions, all the health brokers out there, the health officials that we're supposed to listen to and trust, have access to the framework of this app and find out who, everybody is using it. So they already have that information. All the health officials already have the information. Everybody's using this app. Now everybody else in the universe has this as well. If they're an app developer and can access the log file, which is pretty much anybody. You and I could develop an app tomorrow and say, yeah, we need access to the log file because we're doing this and that and the other thing. And there you go. And so this has been a major breach of people's private information, medical records, everything. I mean, everything. It was just an open door, and and it got out there, and Google's being sued. Diaz is the plaintiff along with some other people. And I just want to read you. This is the complaint, a very, very long document. I also tweeted this. I was actually on the ball this week. Go to @Ben McCoy Show on Twitter and look for my tweet on this so you can read this thing because it's incredible. But I want to read you some of this from the complaint. It kind of lays some groundwork about what I was just talking about, how the system log functions, and then what actually happened. I'm not going to go through everything. I just want to kind of give a little bit of background to show you what this is all about. Starting at item 50. If you go to Twitter and find me @Ben McCoy Show and click on the PDF about this case, you can find these item numbers. This is item 50. Every Android device hosts a log file or system log, a file for logging important device metrics. Smartphone system log files enable application and operating system developers. I just went through all this. I don't need to read all this. It talks about everything I just said about the log file. However, let me get to what actually happened. Jumping to item 76 on this. Here we go. And item 76. From its inception until at least March 9th, 2021, it's called GAEN, the Google Apple something. We'll just call it GAIN. That's the app, the COVID-19 contact tracing app. The acronym is GAEN. I'll call it GAIN, and that's referring to the contact tracing app. From its inception until at least March 9th, 2021, GAIN through the Google Play Store logged every RPI received by the user's device to that device's system log. Now, the RPI is an encrypted number. That's what I was kind of trying to explain, where it tries to keep the person private by generating an RPI, whatever that stands for. But it's an encrypted number that gets broadcast through Bluetooth. So you're not saying, hey, Joe Smith has COVID. Instead it says RPI number blah 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 has COVID. Anyway. From its inception until or about April 2021, GAIN through the Google Play Store logged every RPI sent by the user's device to that device's system log. That's what I was talking about. It didn't need to be logged by the system's log. It didn't need to be recorded in each device's system log, but it was. And I just think there's something nefarious there. From its inception, GAIN through GPS. Now, it took me a while. I had to go back and read the acronyms. In this case, GPS stands for Google Play Store, not GPS as you think about it with your getting directions on your phone. Google Play Store GPS. From its inception, GAIN through GPS has logged every COVID-19 exposure notification received by the user's device. From its inception through in or about mid-June 2021, GAIN logged the fact that an app user had elected to share a positive COVID test result. Google's Android operating system writes to the system log by name every activity started in an application on the device. An activity in the Android operating system means a discrete screen within the application. Logging activities threatens privacy because application developers generally assign descriptive names to their application's activities, which reveal what the application user is doing as he or she uses the application. Together with the release of the GAIN framework, Google publicly released software code for its own contact tracing app, which it offered to contact tracing app developers as an example or model to be followed. I'll skip ahead a couple of these. It's talking about how everybody just basically, Google issued a framework and a basic model. Here, follow this recipe to make your own app, right? Well, everybody just took the recipe and basically they didn't modify it. Google already did all the heavy lifting. Why modify it? Just use it. Put your name on it and use their code. So all of the default item names and things like that stay the same. If you've ever done any developing in WordPress or anything like that, you kind of understand that, how the WordPress directories, when you download the WordPress repository, you pretty much leave everything as it is because WordPress already built the thing for you. Now, if you wanted to, you could, the framework's there, you could do anything you wanted to. Go back and rewire everything, but why do that? It already works. That's basically what happened here. So it's no secret where the where all the private data is what they're saying, because it all had the same names. For instance, share diagnosis activity was a command in the code, and that pretty much told you that this guy has COVID or whatever. This was information, again, that was just available for the world to see. And this is on top of the privacy. Google knew that when they released this thing, there would be privacy concerns, obviously, and medical information and HIPAA and all that stuff. And so they put all kinds of, your information is safe. Here at Google, we care about you more than you care about yourself. And you download our apps and we are going to protect you and keep you safe. And I mean, this isn't even hacker level stuff. This is basic stuff. I mean, they wrote it to the system log, and anybody can access the system log. You don't have to be a hacker or anything to get into it. I don't want to read all. I want you to read it. I don't want to read it on the show, but this is the real kicker here. I love this. This is it right here. If you've got an Apple phone in your pocket right now, you might be feeling safe with everything I'm saying. Well, think again, because number 94 in the complaint, I'm going to read this to you. You're going to love this. This is item number 94 in the complaint. Google has allowed other GAIN participants randomized MAC addresses and associated RPIs, including Apple device users whose own devices do not allow such collection, to be stored in the system log files of Android devices participating in GAIN, as shown in the image below. And they have an image from a log file output. Did you hear that? So if you're an Apple user, you've got an iPhone in your pocket and you use this contact tracing app, Google, Apple is better at privacy than Google. I think everybody knows that. So Apple doesn't have a system log file. They handle it differently. I don't even know how they handle it. But their devices don't even allow this type of collection to take place. So Google said, that's all right. Your device doesn't allow it. We'll just use our framework to allow it. And so they take the information off of the Apple user's phone, the iPhone, and store it onto the Android user's phone. So now they're taking someone's data, personally identifying information, medical history, COVID status, and everything else, taking it off of your iPhone and putting it on some stranger's Android phone just because you happen to pass by them on a sidewalk somewhere. This is the level this is what we're talking about. And just think about, again, I'm going to go back to it. The reason I'm telling you this story, it's not because it's extremely important in and of itself, unless you were victimized by this app, but it's what the nefarious purpose behind it is and how much this could be used against all of us, in so many different ways you could think of. I mean, Google and Apple got together and volunteered to work on this thing for the health officials. They were just being good corporate stewards. But they built this themselves, I guess free of charge, just to hand it out out there. I mean, there's something going on where we already know they're tracking every single thing we do. China's already got the social credit system. There's people that already think that kind of thing is coming anyway. I'll leave it up to you to figure it out, but it's not good. But the fact that they're taking personal information off of iPhones and storing it on Android phones, that's just unbelievable. But yet, here we are. So keep an eye on that case because that is interesting. There's a lot more to this, and but I don't want to get into all these details and read all this. I want you to go check it out. Go to @Ben McCoy Show on Twitter and find a couple of my latest tweets, and you'll see a link to this thing because you really need to check it out. What else? Oh, this is a good one. Oh, I just love this story. I love it. I love it so much. Governor Abbott down in Texas, has had a border crisis to deal with for quite some time, as you may be aware. He's had to pull his resources together and deal with it as best he could because the federal government is absolutely useless when it comes to dealing with their own southern border. And in fact, they are encouraging illegal immigrants to cross into our country. And so the governor of Texas is, he's got to handle it himself. And this is not a victimless crime. I mean, there's ranchers, there's everybody else. Just this problems mounting like you can't even believe. And it's a problem that the government has a constitutional mandate to deal with, and they're not. Meanwhile, you have sanctuary cities, these big cities across America who love to talk about how welcoming they are to the poor immigrants, and we have open arms, and we will take care of you. Please come to our cities, and we will take care of you. We have open arms. We are big-hearted, bleeding heart liberals and progressives, and we love you, and we want you in our cities and our states. So Governor Abbott did a pretty smart thing. He said, all right, I'm going to put them on buses. Since these cities are begging for these immigrants, these illegal immigrants, I'm going to send them there. That's what they want. They're sanctuary cities, aren't they? We've got our hands full here. We can't deal with them. The federal government's not doing their job. It's left up to me as the governor of Texas to deal with it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put them on a bus. I'm going to send them to New York City because the mayor there has said, hey, we're a sanctuary city. Open arms and all that. So Governor Abbott sends a couple bus loads to New York City, and the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, meets him at the Port Authority and gives a speech about how he can't believe he's being treated this way, how the terrible governor of Texas is sending us these illegal immigrants to deal with. And all. I mean, talk about a taste of your own medicine. You asked for it, buddy. And it's not just New York. Abbott has sent them to Washington, D.C., different places where they have proclaimed loudly that they are a sanctuary city. And he's saying, all right, put your money where your mouth is. We don't want them here. We can't deal with them here. You take them. And they've asked for them. I think that's just a beautiful story. Because they don't have to advertise their sanctuary city. They could get on board with the program and help take care of the issue. I mean, the federal government is supposed to manage our borders, and we're supposed to have a border policy that works. And we're not supposed to be open borders 24/7 where illegal immigrants pour into our borders. And it is a lot more humane to build a wall and to have a border policy that works than just have open borders. People are dying. The drug cartels are getting so much richer on human trafficking than they ever did with drugs. I mean, it's unbelievable. They have found, the drug trade has probably taken a hit due to our open borders because it's so much more lucrative to shuttle people into America. And there's probably a lot less risk involved. It's just money over money, just pouring in. Drug cartels have made a business out of it. And so we are really enriching them, and they have no sense of morality or honor, and pay up or die and all that stuff. And they don't just kill the one person; they kill the whole family. And you've seen the horrible pictures and heard the stories. And people, dying on these ranchers' properties trying because they have no water. And it's just, this open border policy is just terrible for, if nothing else, terrible for the immigrants. It's a lot more humane and safer to have a working border with a working border policy where we know who's coming in. They come through the front door. They come legally, and we provide the services that we can, and everything's done in an orderly fashion. At least we know who's coming in the country. Not like these repeat criminals that have, you've heard all the stories, the DWIs and the families that have been killed and the innocent people and all. I mean, just over and over and over and over again. These people that are arrested 7, 8, 9, 10 times on violent crimes and released because they're an illegal immigrant. Ah, man. So Abbott's doing what he can. God bless him down there. Sending the illegals to New York. And I love the mayor of New York, how upset he is about it. Yet he's so proud of his sanctuary city status. But money where your mouth is, pal. Anyway, I found that story on Fox News. I thought you might enjoy that. Anywho, that's about all we have for this week, folks. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please tell your friends and family and everybody else you can think of about the show. The more, the merrier. Love the feedback that we're getting, and really appreciate you out there. And please stay tuned and share, tweet, meet me, over on Twitter. Send me an email, benmccoyshow@gmail.com. Tell me what you think, and we'll see you next time on the other side. God bless.